Hello, this is Francis from McCaffreyCrafts, and today I have a very special guest, and his name is Simon Keegan. And I discovered him there recently, and I've been following him on Instagram. And I think it's very interesting, the what he's involved in, his background. And I just thought it'd be very interesting for you guys in the community because I know a lot of guys here are interested in martial arts, stick fighting, and a lot of these things. And I spoke to Simon, and we've been chatting now for a few weeks. And very intelligent guy, and I thought it'd be very good to get him onto this live stream and to let him explain a little bit about his background in martial arts, the things he's trying to do, and he's a very credible, honest guy. And on this channel, I do respect honesty and people that are very good and true to who they are. And I found these attributes in Simon, and I want to tell all my followers. So anyway, look, Simon, hello, how are you?
I'm very well, and thanks very much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. I've been watching your YouTube channel for a while. I find it very therapeutic watching you making the sticks.
Very good. That's the polite way. That's a nice way to say it. But the instant thing that everyone's going to notice is how much I have dressed down and you have dressed up. You're really showing me up with your dapper style there.
Well, I've just come straight from work. That's all it is.
I know. You don't walk around the house in this all the time.
Not all the time. No, sometimes loosen the waistcoat when I'm in the house.
That's it as well. So look, let's just dive straight into it as well. And like one of the first things that really caught my attention when I looked at your Instagram is that you had this great picture of yourself and your dad, and you seem to have this this real proud memory of training with your dad. And I found that interesting because sometimes it's very hard to find a father and son who had learned directly from their father, and I thought I was very interested in that. That's what initially caught my attention. So just to start, could you tell me a little bit about training with your dad in Irish stick, and maybe a little bit about your dad and his martial arts background?
Yeah, sure. I mean, to start with, I've taught karate for the last 25 years. So probably if you Google me, that's what you'll get is karate. But kind of even before I did karate, my dad introduced me to martial arts because he'd done a lot of things in his life. He'd done jiu-jitsu. He actually started jiu-jitsu when he was about 9 years of age, which would have been 1959 in Liverpool. So just as a kid, I was always interested in martial arts, and I was lucky to have people in my family that had done martial arts. So my great uncle had done jiu-jitsu going back to the 1930s, which is really early for this country. He must have been one of the very early black belts in this country. So I always had that opportunity. I was always boxing in my granddad's garden. I was always learning jiu-jitsu from my dad. And then, my dad always had, to me at the time, they were just walking sticks and hiking sticks because my dad we used to like going to the Lake District, particularly hiking or Snowdonia. And he always had a stick. And then, now and again, we'd just do some stick fighting and stick self-defense. And then, he'd tell me about one of them. Oh, this one's really old. It's over 100 years old. It's from Ireland, and we just train. And then as I kind of got into doing martial arts more formally, he was doing that as well. So we trained together in everything: jiu-jitsu, karate, tai chi, iaido, but we'd always keep up, the stick, which was something that he'd always been interested in.
Okay, so you mentioned there that your father had a very old stick, and I'd like to, if you can tell me a little bit about that as well, because I've seen the picture of it. It's very interesting,
yeah,
and it's definitely it has a lot of history to it as well. So you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the stick that he gave me, and I've shown you pictures of it. It's I didn't know that much about it from my dad, and I would ask him things about it. It would have. It has like a flower on it, which to me looks like a blackthorn flower, a slow.
It does,
flower.
Yes. Yeah.
And he just said, "Oh, it's so you know which stick's yours when you leave in the pub." But I'm sure it had more significance than that. And I asked my Uncle John, who'd given it to my dad. He lives in China, so emailed him and I said, can you tell me a bit about this stick? And he said, well, I'm glad I gave it to your dad because, he's given it to you and so on. I'm glad it'll get looked after, And he'd been given it by, it was an old man in Kerry whose name was, now, as you may know, in Kerry, there's Hagen and there's Egan and there's Agan. Yes. And the different spellings of the same.
Exactly.
If you look at the DNA, it's all the same thing. Now, and he didn't put two and two together that Hagen and Egan and McKeegan and Keegan were the same clan. So the old man Hagen gave him the stick because he was a very old man who didn't have any sons or grandsons, and he wanted somebody to look after it. And Uncle John made a good impression on him because he was a linguist, you see, and the old man liked that John was speaking Irish. And so he gave it to him, and the story was that it had gone back to 1834. And John said to me, there was some big event happened in 1834 in Kerry, something Ballyvey, and it's obviously as you
the
know,
beach,
Ballyway Strand, so it was so they say, the big faction fight. Now, I don't know if this stick was used in that or not, but that's the story as it was relayed to me.
Well, it's quite old, and it's from the same region, there is a chance, and you said your father there was from Liverpool, and what a lot of people probably don't know, and I know you might know this, is that outside of Ireland in Liverpool there was a huge Irish community. And I'd like to maybe, if you want to just tell a little bit about the history of the Keegans, how they came to Liverpool, or if your father ever told you any stories about the Irish community in Liverpool.
Yeah, sure. So you're quite right. And I don't know lots of statistics, but one statistic I know is that around about 1850, Liverpool was the fourth biggest Irish city. Only Dublin, Belfast and Cork had more Irish people than Liverpool. Now, they didn't all stay. Obviously, some people came over to Liverpool with a view to sailing to New York and etc. But certainly a lot of them did stay. So I've got, obviously, Keegan on my dad's side. I've got Malloy on my mum's side. I've got other, Casey and Stafford and things like that. But in terms of the Keegans, they came over they came over from Dublin in 1858, and they settled in Birkenhead. So what you found at the time is that a lot of the Irish that came over worked on the docks because it was a sort of, there was no entry point in terms of academic qualifications for it. So they either lived in Kirkdale, or Bootle, or they lived across the river, which was Birkenhead. So the River Mersey was the historic border between Lancashire and Cheshire, but it was really kind of both sides of the Liverpool city region. So my great grandparents, John Keegan and Mary Casey, they came over with their three eldest kids in 1858. They settled in Birkenhead. And that Birkenhead at that time was the town in England with the biggest Irish population of anywhere. I won't say Britain because I think Glasgow might have had more, but certainly in England it was. And what happened was there was a lot of sectarian unrest between the Irish Catholics and the local Protestants, and this turned into faction fights, riots, and so on. And I think there was probably more riots in Birkenhead at that time than that, and faction fights than there had been anywhere since Ireland, in the 1830s.
Well, they were coming over at the time where the faction fighting was still within the Irish psyche. There was evidence of training schools. A lot of Irish people would have been from rural backgrounds, going to, as you said, working in the docklands in Liverpool. There is a big affinity between Ireland and Liverpool as well. You see that with the football and with different things as well. It's like not a lot of people know that as well, about the huge Irish community. And of course, there are sectarian things in Edinburgh as well, in Glasgow, in Liverpool, where the Irish went to as well. And of course, I think it's a reasonable assumption to say, of course, they would have been fighting with sticks. They would have had training in stick fighting. There were people that might have some fencing training. Everyone would have had some kind of way. It was, I know it's a bit of a stereotype, like the fighting Irish, but there is a lot of evidence that shows that was something that was deeply rooted within Ireland at the time. And again, remember, these faction guys were like cult heroes and worship, they were the superheroes of their time.
Yeah. I mean, it's and I think the interesting thing is that a lot of people tell stories about these vague characters in the past and so on. But I think the interesting thing with that period is there's a lot documented in the newspapers of the day.
Exactly.
And I've obviously posted a few of them, and it's people, they called it the reign of shillelagh. The newspapers were saying, how long must Liverpool live under bludgeon law? So it wasn't just, and some of them involved things, swords. It was like gangs in New York, but it was they definitely picked out the shillelagh and the bludgeon as being the weapons that were used.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is within the UK, a lot of things are documented. There's way more journalism. There's way more things documented at the time. There's court cases and everything. So everything you're saying is spot on. And I don't think a lot of people here on the internet know about this, know about how there was this aspect of faction fighting. There was a sectarian side of things as well. And there were stories in newspapers demonizing this as well, which is great supplementary evidence that shows this as well. Now, could you have the Keegans ever been involved in any rebellions or faction fightings or anything over the years as well? It's a good name. There's plenty of Keegans around. What kind of trouble have your guys got up to?
All of them. Where should we start? I mean, if you go back to the Tyrone Rebellion, which was against the kind of Elizabethan English. There was a McKeegan that was kind of leading that, and he was going over to Spain, bringing troops over. More recently, the Williamite Wars, as they're called, the Battle of, I don't know how to pronounce it, Ohrim, is it?
Yeah.
In Galway, yeah.
That's the way I pronounce it anyway. I hope it's right.
It's one way of pronouncing it, isn't it? So yeah, Keegans were involved in that, and then there's the United Irish Rebellion in 1798. So this is an interesting one to me, because my great grandfather John Keegan was a stonemason. So I'm always interested in kind of links to that. And there was where he came from. He was from Westmeath originally, and then he moved to Louth, then he moved to Dublin. But in Westmeath, there was a lot of Keegans who were stonemasons. Mm-hmm. So anyway, in the United Irishman Rebellion, 3 Keegan brothers who were all stonemasons were involved in the Battle of Vinegar Hill and so on. And apparently they escaped the English. Hugh Keegan jumped 100 feet off a cliff into the sea to escape. And apparently, if you go to Wexford, it's still called Keegan's Leap today.
Did he survive? How did that work out for him?
Yeah, well, he got away, but his 2 brothers didn't. I think one of his brothers got shot and one of his brothers got hanged, but he got away all right. So the other link is one of the famous factions was the White Feet and the Black Feet. Yeah. So people talk about these factions, and I don't think they look at why they have these names. And the White Feet, we call that because they were stonemasons, and the limestone was on their boots. So they say that it's a quote, isn't it? That factions were along the lines of family or religion or trade. And in the case of the White Feet, they started as stonemasons. They were a union of stonemasons. And they wanted to look after the people who were being victimized by the landlords, the kind of tithe wars. So they were sort of involved in that. And one of the people who documented that was a poet called John Keegan again, and he was Hedge School educated. And you know that the Hedge Schools was a bit of a breeding ground for rebellion. And then
explain to people what a hedge school is, because my family would be involved in that too. So what is a hedge school? Would you explain?
So my understanding of a hedge school is that all of the things that were banned by the English, so speaking Irish, Gaelic, the practice of martial arts, maybe the reading of Irish mythology and folk heroes, all of these things that were banned were taught in illicit schools. So I don't think they were literally taught in hedges. They would have been in buildings, but it was essentially a rebellious school where young people, particularly young men, were taught. They were taught academia, they were taught reading, writing, and arithmetic, but as well as that, they were taught about the folk heroes of Ireland and the mythology of Ireland. They learned the Greek classics with a slight slant on it, and they were taught stick fighting as well. Another John Keegan Casey, people call Leo Casey, was Hedge School educated as well, and he was a great hero of the Fenian Rebellion.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that kids used to love to go to these. Imagine like a band school and they were going and it was interesting. They were learning all this illegal stuff. Maybe that's what we need to start doing again here in modern times to get kids interested.
Maybe, yeah. Well, maybe it's kind of like the martial arts, I suppose, isn't it? Like these kung fu schools,
Yeah. No, it's very interesting because, with that Tyrone Rebellion that you mentioned, I know the McCaffreys were involved in that as well, because my clan would. And it's very interesting. Like, there's echoes of what you're saying involved in what I know about my family too regarding the stonemasons. Like a lot of my family, the McCaffreys, and the Fermanagh and Tyrone border, and they would be associated with the stonemasons as well. And my family were heavily involved in the hedge schools as well. It was done up in the mountains in Fermanagh, and it was you'd have to go up maybe the side of the hedge to get to the back of the house, and it was all it was an interesting and a different time within Ireland as well. And for me, what was always interesting to me is the great pride that they saw in these heroes. They looked at these guys. There was a certain skill to it as well. And it's just been a shame that it's kind of been demonized over the years. Yeah. Faction fighting is wrong. Or what do you think of that?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, the hero of the Whitefield was Captain Rock, wasn't it? Which was a kind of folklore hero, like Robin Hood. People don't know whether Robin Hood was a real person, whether he was a mythical figure, or whether it was maybe a name used by multiple people. And I think, to use that analogy, probably to the Norman elite, Robin Hood was a terrorist.
Yeah. But freedom fighter. He's a freedom fighter.
To the poor people, he was a freedom fighter. He was robbing from the rich to give to the poor. And I think that the likes of the Whitefield and the people in the tithe wars with that type of people, two of my line of Keegans were outlawed as Jacobites, for the after the Battle of Orem and the the 1641 rebellion, and they had their lands taken off them. So to the English, they were Jacobite rebels, but obviously to the people that they were helping. So I think some of what gets written about the factions is from that English political bias, a little bit like Guy Fawkes. To some people, Guy Fawkes was doing people a favor by trying to blow up the Parliament. To other people, he was a terrorist.
But they were demonized by everyone. Even the Catholic Church in Ireland would demonize them, as you mentioned as well. And actually, the GAA and the Football Association were heavily demonizing. They just didn't want this. They wanted structure. They wanted to get people away from fighting. And it's going to take conversations like this to get guys interested and to start looking back as well, because within Ireland, it's kind of still frowned upon, the faction fighting, the fighting Irish, and given the kind of culture that we live in now, where everyone's offended by everything, no one wants to be associated with stereotypes, but there's always some some elements of that I think is exploring. And hopefully people will watch these and it'll start a conversation like about these different types of things. And it's an undiscovered, like you this kind of will segue us into Keegan Bata. Like, what you're trying to do with Keegan Bata, I think is really good. And I know it's been quite difficult to get going over the years because you have a full-time job like most people. And it's something there that I definitely want to support and I want to help out. So look, regarding like your background, like in like martial arts and stuff, like you mentioned you'd been involved in karate. And so like, how do you kind of go from that then towards into Keegan Bata? Just kind of let us know your kind of journey into it in recent times.
Yeah. So I suppose my dad died in October 2021. And, that's, as anybody who's been through that type of thing, because I was really close to my dad. He was like a best friend as well as a dad and a teacher. He was kind of like a Jedi master. You kind of come to terms with it in different ways, don't you? And everybody's got like their own coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
And one of my, I suppose, coping mechanisms was, well, I want to pay tribute to my dad. I want to kind of do something to continue his legacy and all of this sort of thing. And my dad loved Tai Chi. Now, I've done Tai Chi quite a bit. I wouldn't say I love Tai Chi like my dad loved Tai Chi. My thing has always been the more applied side of the martial arts, karate, jiu-jitsu, and so on. But I was thinking about what my dad taught, and it kind of occurred to me that my dad was sort of like a Tai Chi master before he ever did Tai Chi. Yeah. If you know what I mean, he always had that nature about him. Some people are a certain way, and then they go and study martial arts, and it turns their personality around, and they all of a sudden, this kind of like Daniel-san in Karate Kid, this bullied kid becomes this badass. Yeah. It wasn't like that for my dad. My dad always had those qualities. He's the most calm guy. I never in 40 years heard him lose his temper, heard him swear, heard him lose his cool. He was always like that. He was always very, very centered. And I think he didn't do Tai Chi because he wanted to know about Yang Luchan or Sun Lutang, or because he thought that the Chinese were a mystical people. He did Tai Chi to better understand himself and his own ways. And I thought, well, maybe I should look a little bit closer to home instead of looking at these Oriental martial arts. Can you say? I don't know if you can say Oriental.
You can. It's okay.
That's offensive. Maybe I'll look at my own family background and the stuff that my dad taught me, and kind of I'll teach some of my karate students a little bit if they want to know it. So I've done some classes in Irish stick for them, and they enjoyed it. And then I'll start kind of documenting a little bit as well, what I know about it, what I've learned about it. So that was the impetus for it, really, is to kind of is my dad's legacy. I mean, I think it's a strange one because when people have done Japanese martial arts, they talk about styles. Okay. Yeah. So if you've done karate, they say, what style do you do? Do you do Shotokan? Do you do Goju-ryu? Do you do Wado-ryu? And so people have that mindset. But if you think about European martial arts, should we say, if you say that you go into a boxing club, people don't say, oh, what style of boxing are you learning? You just boxing. Now, your coach might have a different style. I can guarantee if Mike Tyson was to teach you to box, you would finish up boxing differently to if Muhammad Ali
told you. The little thing to the side, yeah.
Yeah, because every fighter has got his own style, but we don't talk about style of boxing. We don't talk about style of football. Now, I don't know, Pele might play football differently to David Beckham, but it's not a style. So when my dad was teaching me, he never said to me, I'm going to teach you Keegan style stick fighting, because that would have been an anomaly. He just taught me
what he had
to
learned
defend
that suited
myself.
him.
You know, so to put it in, I'll put it in a little bit of kind of historical context. So I talked about my great grandparents moving over to Birkenhead, Liverpool. So after John Keegan died, the family moved over the water to Liverpool Dockside. So that's Kirkdale, Bootle. And they lived in that Irish community. It's like a square mile of an Irish docker community for the next 100 years. So that the house my dad was born in was about 200 yards away from the house my great-great-grandfather lived in. So it was quite a tight kind of Irish Catholic community. And so there was still a little of that sectarian nature in Liverpool. Now, again, I'm not taking sides. I've got both sides in my family. I've got Catholics, I've got Protestants, I've got like Welsh tobacconists. I've got the full lot, and I don't care. But the dockers were treated quite badly a lot of the time by their employers. You know, the Irish were paid less and so on. They were laid off. So they had tough lives. And the other thing that started to happen in round about the 1870s now, you know, everybody watches Peaky Blinders. So to kind of put it in that sort of context, there was Peaky Blinders like gangs in Liverpool. So in Liverpool, the Peaky Blinders obviously was Birmingham, but Liverpool had the Dead Rabbits, who was also in New York. They had the Hibernians, they had the High Rip, they had the Molly Maguires from Ireland. And so some of these were kind of criminal gangs like the Peaky Blinders. Others were more unionized factions. And the main in that Kirkdale area, the main kind of menace was the High Rip. So they were, what they used to do was pick on the dockers. When the dockers got paid their money on a Friday night, they used to mug them. So they used to use belt buckles, leather belts with belt buckles. They had knives, which is where the name High Rip comes from. They all had, obviously, hobnail boots, steel toe cap boots. And so the dockers started to fight back, you know, and the timber yard laborers. So my great-great-granddad and my great-granddad worked on the timber yards, because a lot of what went in and out of Canada Dock was, and Canada Dock is in Liverpool, by the way, was timber, was wood. So they used to make shillelaghs from the wood to defend themselves, and they actually had a faction name, which is the Logwood Gang. And so it was just a matter of survival. You know, the dockers and the timber yard laborers was, don't walk home on your own, lads, because the High Rip are out. You know, make sure you leave in threes. Take a piece of logwood, take a shillelagh with you. You know, and you've got a kind of better chance. And if they ever caught some of the High Rip, they used to do what the Whitefeet used to do, which was make them get down on their knees and repent. You know, so they became like a kind of vigilante gang. And so the dockers, the predominantly Irish Catholic dockers, you know, they learned to defend themselves with the sticks. They also had little tricks. You know, they'd keep razor blades behind the lapels. So if someone grabbed them, if they headbutt them, they'd lose their fingers. My granddad's generation, what they would do is they would have a sixpence, I think it was, whichever the big coin was, would be sewed into the handkerchief, which was in their top pocket. And then you would whip the handkerchief out to whip the coin into someone's eyes. You know, so these were the tricks that they did. And so my dad, his first job was working on the docks. Obviously, his dad took him to one side and said, look, here's what you do, here's what you don't do. Don't play pitch and toss with the dockers on the dock road. Make sure you carry your darts in your pocket, you know, because men always had a game of darts in the pub. The police couldn't stop you for having darts in your pocket. But obviously, if you were attacked, that's a convenient thing.
Exactly,
you know, so it was little things like that. So the stick was part of the wider kind of self-defense thing, you know, and it was just an efficient way of striking with the stick. It wasn't. There's a lot of stick styles in the world. I don't necessarily mean Irish ones or pseudo-Irish ones, but Chinese styles or Filipino styles. There's a lot of twirl in the stick and so on. But a lot of those styles are using the stick as a substitute for the knife. Yes. So when you learn Filipino stick, they'll do the stick in hand drills with the stick, and then they'll go, okay, put that down and now pick up a knife. This is the real stuff. But obviously, if you sort of gently cut someone with a knife, you will cut them. If you gently stroke them with a stick, nothing will happen. So, the stick, you have to be all in with the stick. It's slightly different movements. It always makes me laugh when I see these things where people say, if you're attacked and you've got an umbrella on you, reality check, hit someone with an umbrella, it won't do much.
That's the Jonathan Steele or something, isn't it, with his umbrella thing?
Yeah, I think there's obviously certain places where if you thrust an umbrella at somebody, you will damage them, like you would with anything, a pen or a pineapple or anything. But
now I know why you're wearing the suit. You'll have your little coin in your handkerchief.
Oh,
I know all your tricks now.
Well, I'll tell you my tricks. Look, my suit jacket.
Have you got blades under the lapel there? It wouldn't surprise me.
No, I've got this pen in my pocket. Where are we? There. That pen, it's diamond tipped. You can do damage with that, but it's a perfectly legal pen to carry.
That's how they steal the cars, isn't it? They just hit it and the diamond takes it.
Exactly. The pen is mightier than the sword. But that's the thing.
Don't say too much, because it can be used against you in a court of law.
I know, but it's just to write with. I'm a writer for a living.
Of course it is, just to write. Yeah.
yeah, but I'm saying hypothetically, one could put it to that use. But I remember going on a course for Japanese sword and people saying this, teaching us techniques of cutting with the razor sharp katana, and then saying, obviously, if you're attacked and you've got an umbrella, you can do the same move. If you want to wind up the guy mugging you, then that's the way to go about it. So I think that there's the definition that I like is in Japanese martial arts, they have jutsu and they have do. So you had, in the samurai days, you had jujitsu, aiki jujitsu, kenjutsu. That was all stuff designed to kind of disable, maim, or kill. In modern times, you have aikido, judo, karate do, kendo, which is sport. And I think my approach with the stick has always been, it's jutsu, not do. So, I don't want to make pretty patterns with it if I was to defend myself. I want to be able to.
So what would be some attributes of this style that you kind of learned from your father? I do agree with you that I think a lot of styles get adapted based on your physicality, based on what you can do, based on, as you pointed out earlier, people in a fight with no rules are always looking for an advantage. So sometimes if you're big, you'll have something that gives you an advantage. And I actually do believe as well that there are various different styles that can develop. And you made a great analogy, within boxing, there's not all these boxing styles, it's just boxing. And then based on your physical attributes and what you're good at and what you can hold, you might have long arms and a small body, then, you have some advantage. And, I think that's a very good kind of way to kind of look at it. So just tell us a little bit and the community here about Keegan Bata and what.
The main attributes for me would be, it's not the movement that you do with the stick, it's where you hit them is an important thing. So it's like any kind of tool, isn't it? A hammer is a good tool, but you don't want to try and take a screw out with it. There's the right tool for the right job. And so, when my dad was teaching me, he'd start with, the first thing he ever taught me was, like a 1-2 in boxing, a jab and a cross, but it was a 1-2-3. So it was the jab, the cross, and the elbow. So the point of the elbow would come right across the eyebrow or the temple. When you watch boxing, when a boxing match gets stopped on cuts, or you see them smearing all the Vaseline over them, it's usually there that's bleeding because it's very, very thin tissue. So my dad said, go for that with the point of the elbow, make that blood stream down their face. Most people, when they taste their own blood, the fight goes out of them.
Exactly.
He used to say, you've got some people who are just animals and you'll have to put them down. But for most people, there's that. So then when he did things like kicks, you learn karate and so on. Obviously, you're in bare feet and they're talking about using the ball of the foot or the toe and etc. My dad in the early days always taught me on the basis that if you're attacked, you're likely to be wearing shoes at the time. So what he would do is he would kind of come in with the edge of the shoe, with the edge of the sole of the shoe, and go down the guy's shin and land right on the top of the foot with his heel.
That hurts. I can feel that now.
Yeah, it was sneaky. So you imagine scraping down the shin and then landing on those bones on the top. So it was sneaky stuff. It was the headbutt. My dad grew up in Kirby in Liverpool. It's called a Kirby kiss, is a headbutt. So and it's the way you deliver it. It's not delivered straight on. It's done with a slight flick and so on. So the stick was the same. It wasn't taught, this is how you kind of fence with it like Errol Flynn. It was, you're holding your stick, you would hold it quite close like this, and then the strikes would come from there. So strike with the knob, as the bulb at the top, or that would come straight down onto the head. But it would be, key would be where you are striking them. And that's the, if you've got one of these great big heavy blackthorns, the super exaggerated like Gangs of New York type ones. Obviously, you can hit people more or less anywhere, and you'll do them a mischief with it. But regular walking sticks, if you hit somebody in a soft spot with it, it won't do a whole lot of damage. You've got to know where to strike. So it's the kind of anatomy of it. It's striking to like the back of the hand. I
like what I'm hearing. I'm like what I'm hearing.
Where they'll drop their stick, or if people are holding their stick with two hands, like so, strike into the knuckles. The practical things. It's like the Japanese sword. 9 times out of 10, they aim for the wrists because that's what's presented to you.
Exactly, makes sense.
That's where they'll go for, yeah. So it was very practical the way my dad taught me of use the head, use the elbow, get that kick in with the stick. You're probably close quarters. You might be in the pub, you might be outside using the butt of it, but also striking to kind of where it hurts, and that's something that I see on martial arts videos of people don't think through what they're doing. And this isn't me being preachy because it happens in my karate classes too. Okay. So you'd say to one of your students, show me a combination of techniques. And they'll say, okay, I'll do a front kick, then I'll do an inside block, then I'll do a reverse punch. You say, okay, talk me through it. You hit him with the front kick. Where should he be? He should be about 10 foot away if you've kicked him properly. So why are you doing a reverse punch now? You need exactly. To kind of not just moves that look pretty when you do them together, but moves that have, well, if you hit him in the knee, what happens to him? Does his head come forward? Does he lean forward? Does he drop his guard? Does he drop his stick? So it's more, as I said, as the Japanese would say, it's more jutsu than do. It's thinking about how to disable the attacker, not necessarily how to just kind of look flamboyant.
But I like it. Look. I think it's good. Like from why I'm listening, because I've interviewed like different people, in this community over it. But like say for example, like Dial, I think originated by Glenn and his father, where there was like doing lots of crowd control, and they had to like push a group of people back as well. But what I'm getting from Keegan Bata is quite. You just want to hurt people, Well, you want to in a good way. I mean, like
it's not that I want to hurt people; it's that I don't want people to hurt me. And if you
the best form of defense is attack. That's
exactly.
Yeah.
If it's a and within the context of the law of the land as well. I don't know about other countries, but self-defense in England is largely based on defending yourself with reasonable force based on how much of a threat that you think you're under. So if somebody attacks you with a knife, you can do more to them than if they attack you empty-handed. If you're at home in bed, you're more vulnerable than if you were, standing in the middle of your dojo or kung fu studio. So it has that in mind of if you're attacked, you're doing the minimum, but you're doing it effectively. So I might, I might strike him, make him drop his stick, and then put him to sleep with a chokehold. It's kind of a practical way of doing the bare minimum, if that makes sense.
No, it's very interesting. That's why I wanted to do this interview. Your style is unique. It is different from the other styles, as far as I've what I can see, and it's definitely something that I think people should check out. Like, if anyone's involved in martial arts, if anyone has an interest in this, you definitely need to get in touch with Simon, and you need to learn about Keegan Bata as well. I just want to say a few more things as well, like just to let people know about you. Like, you're not just a martial artist. You've also you're an accomplished author as well. From my research, I know you've published about 4 books. Your latest one, I think, is about Celtic DNA as well. You're using a lot of modern techniques to trace your genealogy, which I'm fascinated by. Which would be a whole nother interview in itself. And I know you might be working on a new book as well. So just tell people about Simon the author. A bit about your experience. Like, you are a very intelligent academic guy as well. So that's why, people who are going to Keegan Bata as well, they need to know that you are from this background of like studying things. You've researched things as well. You have a certain methodology to do that as well. And you are a successful, accomplished professional author as well, which a lot of people probably won't know.
Thank you. And can I just apologize? It is going dark in Manchester at the moment. Can you still see me okay? Or
Go for it. We're still good for a few more minutes. We'll do a few more minutes.
Okay. So my first 2 books were about King Arthur, and basically it was who was the historic King Arthur. So I won't derail your interview by going into that. If people can email me if they want to know about King Arthur. I then wrote 2 martial arts history books. So I did one on the history of karate, and I wrote one on the history of British jiu-jitsu, which may be of interest to some of your viewers, because jiu-jitsu arrived in England via a man called Edward William Barton Wright, who did a style called Bartitsu, which obviously used a lot of stick techniques, used a lot of English cane techniques. So I think people who are interested in it might be interested in that book. It's a favorite book that I've written as well. And the one which I've just sent to the printers is called DNA of the Celts, or Celts, as you said. That is it came about with my researching my family tree and getting to what we all get to with our family tree, which is that obstacle that you can't get beyond. You've looked at all the census forms, you've looked at all the birth certificates, you've marriage certificates, trade directories, you've been on ancestry.com, you've been on them all. You just can't seem to get beyond that one date. So I was, I'd kind of published a lot of my findings about 10 years ago. And a Keegan in South Africa, I think it was, contacted me and said, "You've gone back further than just about any Keegan. Would you mind doing a DNA test?" So I said, yeah. He paid for it, sent me this test. I did it. And he came back and said, "Your haplogroup is R1B1A2. And I just thought, that was my reaction. But essentially, what the way it works is if you go back, I'll talk you through the haplogroups. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a molecular biologist, but I think I've roughly got the gist of it. If you go back about 200,000 years to Africa, where we all started as Homo sapiens, the original tribe would have been haplogroup A. And then there was a mutation, and that is B. And then there was a mutation from that is C. And then as you find now, when you look across the world, different ethnic groups tend to have different haplogroups. So Celtic people tend to be R1b. Sort of Anglo-Saxon people tend to be R1a. Viking Norse people tend to be haplogroup I1. And then it goes on and on. If you're Jewish, you're probably J. If you're Native American, you're probably Q, and etc. And what it means is that if you go back far enough, your father's 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 father, and etc., everybody who's haplogroup R meets at that one guy. So somewhere, me and every other Celtic person who's R1b has got a common ancestor who lived about 20,000 years ago.
Yeah. That's cool, man. That's fascinating.
Yeah. So then what I did was I took deeper levels of testing. So now I've taken the deepest level, which is called the Big Y. And so I'm like R195212 or something like that. And so there, I match closely 5 guys in the entire world, and 4 of them are Keegans. So what we've determined from this is you can start to look at where in my case, Keegans came from. So my great granddad, before he was in Dublin, was in, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but Drogheda.
Perfect. Spot on.
Yeah. So that's how they say it in Dublin. If you go there, they say it more like Drogheda. But
Drogheda. Yeah. The Drogs.
So he was from there. And then I matched closely with the guy whose family were from Dublin. And then I matched closely with the guy whose family were from Wexford. So we've got kind of like an East Coast Keegans going on. And then you can trace it to Westmeath. So doing that technique, I was able to trace my family back further to Westmeath. And that was where I found my great-great-great-grandparents' marriage certificate, which was the sort of smoking gun that I was looking for. I was looking around Dublin and Drogheda for it. I didn't know I should have been looking in Westmeath for it.
Yeah.
So then what I've done in the is I've traced back further to the tribes. So you've got the High Nile, 9 of the 9 hostages.
Hostages,
The High Mani, and where the common ancestor of all of these tribes were.
Ryan
And then what the common ancestor is with the Welsh, the Cornish, and all of these Celts. So it kind of, from using myself as like a case study, it's taken the migration of the Celts out of Africa, all across Europe, over 200,000 years, to the individual Irish clans. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the thing is, it's fascinating because, like, as I'm sure many people have watched and this and have tried to research their family history, you hit the dead end, and there's nowhere else to go. And this thing that you've wrote a book about, it's something I want to read. I want to know how it's done. I want to know all of these facts. I think it's actually a very interesting topic that you can come up with. And
we're lucky with Irish surnames because they're patronymic, is it? Which means named after one person. So obviously, McDonald is named after Donald, son of Donald. Keegan was son of Egan, and so on. Obviously, if your name is Smith, or your name is Cooper, or your name is Fletcher, it's more difficult because not all Smiths were related. They weren't all descended from one guy. They were just all descended from blacksmiths. So this is why I wanted to do kind of DNA of the Celts, because I think it's a kind of, in that way, it's kind of a more interesting project.
Yeah, of course. And do you have any other books in the works? Because you're saying, look, this book is finished. It's going to the publishers. When that's out, and you can give me the links after to where people can buy some of these books. And I think guys should definitely try to order these and read them as well. And I'm sure if they reach out to you and talk to you, they might even get a signed copy. That would be pretty good.
Never know. It's worth less on eBay if I sign them though. So the next book I'm working on is on stick fighting, just to bring us back full circle. So
perfect. I like this.
So I'm co-authoring it with a guy called Mark Wood, who's he's actually a jiu-jitsu 8th Dan, and he's very, very good. And he's my son's jiu-jitsu teacher as well. So obviously, I'm handing in my son to teach him martial arts. So that's kind of how much I value him. And his interest is in the English cane. More the English cane with the hook on
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. The crook angle,
Uh,
yeah, that was used more like they'd have it over, and they used to fight with that as well, of course.
yeah, and the kind of Bartitsu and so on. So
Yeah.
he's that side. My interest is the Irish side. So we're going to include some history, but we're also going to include a lot of the techniques. But it won't just be the techniques of that you sometimes see with such a block, such a strike. It will also be them applied. It will teach you where to hit them and how. So it'll be quite practical, I think.
Okay, that's like that's amazing. You know, you have these great ideas and stuff as well, and you know that's why I wanted to get you on here as well, because like you know when you see you online or you see a little comment, it's very difficult to know the full story about Simon Keegan and about accomplished artists. You know, I'm an author, martial artist, and all the different things that you're involved in. So look, we'll just finish up now, and I just want everyone to. I will provide links of that Simon will give me for where his books are, and if you want to get in
Thank
touch
you.
with Simon as well, I'll put the links in the description. And please do as well. He's a very easy guy to speak with. He's very passionate about all of these different subjects as well, as you can probably tell from this interview. And I highly recommend that everyone who watches this that you check out Simon, look at his books, and you know get information on his style and his family style that came from his father as well. And so just what was the name of your father? Let's make this to tribute to him. What was his name?
Thank you, David Keegan.
David Keegan, you are very, very proud of your son Simon and his next generation. You know, I'm sure he's smiling down at us now and just looking at this interview, thinking like, you know, who's that guy on there as well? And you know, you've done your father proud. I think every son should do something like this and tribute their father. Like, you know, it's one of those topics that every guy will get a bit teary on. I don't want to have an Oprah moment.
I was going to say, I think I'm going to start crying in a minute. I'll have to
No,
say
but
that
look,
from chopping onions.
it's a very I think it's you know you're being a good example to your son, and you're you know the problem with society is I see we need more guys like you, you know, who have respect, who respect the family, who respect tradition as well, and you know you're educating people, and I think that is a service. You know, you're doing it respect to Ireland from everything I've seen as well. You are an Irishman as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
You know,
Thank you.
and anyone who came out of the like a lot of people don't know about that thing, the Liverpool community as well. Like that was practically Irish. You know, like there was a huge community there.
Well,
In different parts.
there's a reason why the English national anthem gets booed at Liverpool games.
I know, yeah, I noticed. Yeah, see, a lot of North Americans probably wouldn't be familiar with this culture, but I know that all too well as well. But look, I'll tell you what, I'm talking too much as usual. Your final message there, and anything you want to say to guys at the end, okay?
I just, you know, what I would like to say is I'm not new to the Irish stick, but I'm new to the online Irish stick community. I actually started making sticks, not beautiful ones like you make, but just me and my son would go, and my daughter would go into the woods. We'd
Good.
find an oak tree. You know, I'm a bit of a pagan, so I'll say to the tree, "Do you mind if I take a branch?" And you know, we make some training shillelaghs, you know, we make some batter.
Good.
And I just made one, and I liked it. And I'd found this group, the Irish Stick, which John Bata runs. And I posted a picture, and I thought, these guys are going to absolutely shred me. You know, they're going to say, "What do you think you're doing, you bloody amateur English idiot?" You know, and they were also nice. And I thought, well, isn't it nice to have a community like that where people are kind of supportive to each other? And John's got a lovely group on there. So I've enjoyed meeting a lot of people just recently on this.
You can ask John if you're speaking to him. Can he let me rejoin again, because
are you on the naughty side? Are you? Well, I'm banned from nearly every karate group, so join the club. But I don't know, maybe he'll ban me for being on your show then. I don't know. So
no. Look, the thing is, you have a lot of information, and there's different communities online as well. I'm one of these guys. I'm a very direct talker as well. So like, it's only natural that you know, I get banned from a few different groups. There is one group that I'm still a part of anyway that I saw online. Right. But look, that's just don't worry about that. You know, I think it's good that you know you are connecting with guys online as well.
I think
you know,
so, because you know I think a lot of people can be quite what's the word? Is it parochial about the style that they do? You know, so
Yeah.
the way I kind of expected people to be, well, if you're not doing Doyle, you're not doing this, or if you're not doing whatever other styles there are out there, you know. But I've generally found people to be quite, you know, interested in what I do. And, you know, I've had a lot of people, particularly in America, say to me, you know, can we learn this? Can we come and do this? And I think the other thing I wanted to say is I really do appreciate people asking, can we learn this on Zoom and so on? At the moment, I'm saying no to Zoom classes purely because my upbringing in martial arts is that you can't learn except from a teacher in person. Now, I'm not knocking them that do it, but for me, I don't think I could teach people like that. I don't know. I think you need to feel in martial arts. It's a physical thing. It's a tactile thing. You know,
Okay.
I taught my kids to swim. I took them to the swimming baths and put them in the water. I wouldn't have liked to have tried to teach them to swim by Zoom, if that makes sense. So I really appreciate everybody reaching out, asking about Zoom tuition. I will never say never, but at the moment I'm saying not at the moment. But if people are in the Manchester area, Liverpool area, and they'd like to have a go, they're more than welcome.
Okay, well, no, it makes sense. Look, if people are serious about this and they want to get involved and become a coach or something like that, and try to grow it and stuff, they really have to do it in person. And I think that is a good way as well. Like I was saying, look, because of COVID, everyone try to adapt and use technology. So like it can give you a foundation, I think. But like, as you said there, you need to do it in person. You need someone to correct you, your technique. You need someone to say, move your shoulder, move your leg, move different things. You just need that kind of nuance to really get to the level where you are a person who can coach and go on and spread this as well.
Yeah, and it is, you know, it's nuance. I mean, you get it in any martial art. You know, I've seen people in karate where they look great. Their stance, you would look at it and you would say, wow, look at that person. And you can push them over with one finger because it's not rooted, it's not solid. And I think that's, it's really important to me is that it doesn't, there was I keep talking about karate and I'm sorry about that, but there was a rivalry between two karate masters, and one said to the other, your karate is like a guitar. It looks great, it sounds great, but it's hollow. And I think that's the thing sometimes with these things. You can learn something that looks all right, but for it to really have substance, for me, you need to do it in person. And again, I don't mean any offense to people. I know people do distance learning. Maybe they're better teachers than me, and that's how they can do it. But for me, I don't think.
Well, no, it's okay. I think. Look, you have to stay true to what you believe and what you know as well. And you know, as you said there, the catalyst with your father, and you're trying to bring this to the world now. And I think that it's something that will grow. It'll keep moving forward as well. What I would suggest to you is get a YouTube going and just put as much as you can out there and little content and to get people interested and involved. And of course, look, you know, the world's a small place. A lot of people do come over as well. And maybe like, you know, there's 2 or 3 events or seminars you do a year. Maybe you can travel to the US and do an event. I know some of the guys, they go over and they have a 2-day event where they'll go and you know, do some of the techniques. So like, you know, these are things, and like anything you want, you know, I'm a very opinionated, direct type of person. So if you want any advice on business or my opinions of how to grow this, I'll be more than happy to help to give them as well. I think that's an Irish thing. That's probably another reason why I get banned from these groups, because I'm too opinionated. But it's my intention is always wholesome anyway and good. And I'm here to support you in any way I can. And you know, this you've just been immortalized now on the internet. So you know, they'll be looking back, you know, the Keegans of another 1,000 years from now, they'll be looking back at this interview, I guarantee.
Oh, amazing. Well, listen, I try to get over to Ireland at least once a year. So next time I'm over, I'll come and visit you. But
for sure, yeah.
I'll make sure, if I do, I know that I will bankrupt myself because I won't want to leave your shop empty-handed.
No. There's no obligation on that. Like if you just want over and meet, like there's no. I don't do the hard selling stuff. Like that's what I do. The YouTube.
I wouldn't trust myself.
That's it. That's my stealth marketing now. Like, you know,
Yeah,
Steven
exactly.
Seagal, you like, you know, and you.
That's it. That's it.
Okay, look, we got to go now. We've been going for an hour as well. Thank you so much as well. And we'll just end it now. Okay, thank you very much, guys.